The film begins with Bernard Garrett, a black man being charged in court as the committee summons him to testify. Bernard Garrett sits before the court, and he flashes back to his historical background. When he was a small boy, he worked as a shoe shiner for the white folks near a bank in Texas, and he took notes on their business talks while they shined their shoes. He also spied on the bankers, and he'd run away before getting caught. His father checked through his notes, and he saw how talented Bernard was, but he didn't think he could get far with his dream in Texas. Later, after he got married to Eunice, he moved to her uncle's house with his family. Eunice's uncle, Deacon, lived in Los Angeles. Deacon thought of Bernard's real estate work as a joke. Bernard was eventually forced to excuse the family dinner. He then promised to get Eunice and his son out of the shed they were living in and into Deacon's house. The next day, Bernard gave Deacon's son Tony a ride, and he met his white friend Matt. Bernard went to pursue his career by calling different house owners. Eunice then suggested that he meet co-investor Joe. Bernard and Ennis went to see Joe at his lodge. Bernard left angrily, and he claimed he could never work with that kind of man. Eunice got angry as well, and she asked Bernard to either work with Joe or get Barker to come down on his price. Bernard picked the latter choice purchase, and he went to negotiate with Barker. Barker owned a building that Bernard wanted to purchase, but the price was too high. Barker refused to accept Bernard's offer. Bernard didn't give up. He went to Barker's friend, Mr. Reed, to request a loan to buy Barker's business. Later at night, Mr. Barker called Bernard, extent to which, and he gave him the loan because of the extent he went just to secure the loan. Bernard and Eunice attended a party and Joe came by. Joe and Bernard then discussed business apartment, but Bernard was still angry to be around him. Bernard started his work at Mr. Barker's apartment, and then S. Cooper, who lived there, came by and saw black men working. She didn't believe it when Bernard told her he now owned the building. Matt also joined them in working. Police came after a few hours of working prior to the report S. Cooper made. The police left after they got nothing. Mr. Barker decided to make Bernard his business partner, and things began to change for Bernard. He got his family a nice apartment. Unfortunately, Mr. Barker died and his wife took charge of his properties, forcing Bernard to a low-profit end. Bernard saw Joe as his last option, and he went to link up with him. Bernard and Joe decided to buy the building Mainland Land Bank is, thereby buying the bank indirectly. They saw Matt as the best fit for representing them, and they began to train him to become one of them. They trained Matt in how real estate works, how to roll with rich men, and how to play golf and eat expensive delicacies. They also taught Matt mathematical calculations about the business, and he became a monster at everything within a month. When he was fully ready, Bernard and Joe set him out on his first business trip with Charles Renault. He played an astonishing golf game with Charles Renault, which he used to get his attention. Bernard and Joe continued to train him to meet Charles Renault for the main business. Matt met Charles Renault afterwards, and he spoke with him professionally. Matt, Bernard, and Joe had already planned out every possible way Charles Renault could negotiate the business, so Matt made sure he memorized every calculation they did so that he could sound highly professional. He did well, and he secured the business after Charles Renault went for the option he desired from the options Matt gave him. The good life went on for them. Bernard worked hard to get everything in place while Matt eventually got married to Susie. Later on, Bernard decided to buy a bank in Texas because he knew it helped the Negroes living there, but Joe advised that they continue to manage the one they owned in Los Angeles. Bernard insisted, and Joe eventually joined him. They started their mission to buy the bank in Texas. They met Robert Florence Jr. and the other committee members of the bank. Matt successfully got into the bank as well, even though Robert Florence suspected something fishy about Matt. Bernard changed the bank's policy regarding loans to Negroes. He helped the Negroes get good loans that aided their businesses. Everything went well until Robert Florence discovered Bernard and Joe as part of the business, and he tried to blackmail them. However, Susie pushed Matt to ask Bernard and Joe to buy a second bank in Texas and let her run it. They didn't welcome the idea, but Matt goes behind their backs to get a loan at the expense of Bernard and Joe's investments. Matt began to have problems with the business, and Bernard was finally forced to act as a cleaner in his own bank just to be around Matt in case he needed any help. The examiner with the office of the comptroller of the currency visited the bank, and he explained to Matt how the bank had gone against the rule and all. In the end, Matt confessed that he involved Florence in the business, so Florence had set them up. Joe eventually found out that Matt had used Mainland Bank in Texas to run the second bank. So they went to meet him angrily. They quickly tried to make things right, but the deputy comptroller of the currency came with his men, and they fired Matt. Joe and Bernard began to find their way out of the mess while Senator McClellan advised Matt to save himself from going to prison. Matt went to court, and he testified against Bernard and Joe. Senator McClellan also gave Bernard a choice to either take the immunity deal or defend the Negroes' needs and go to prison. Back to the present day, Bernard decides to defend the Negroes' equality. Bernard and Joe then face 3 years imprisonment, and the government takes everything they have. After they get out of prison, Bernard tells Eunice how Matt helped them buy a house in the Bahamas, and the movie ends as they drive away as free men.